In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, the Horus Heresy. Even after 10,000 years, the very name is poison. It is the wound that will never close, the betrayal that broke the Imperium, turning brother against brother, son against father. It is the moment the dream of unity died, and the galaxy was drowned in the blood of its own guardians. This is how it began. The Golden Vision. Long before the heresy, before the galaxy burned, there was the Great Crusade. The Emperor of mankind, immortal, brilliant beyond comprehension, strode across the stars at the head of his armies. Mankind had been scattered for millennia, shattered by old night, cut off from itself by warp storms and the predations of alien races. The Emperor's purpose was absolute, to reunite every lost human world, to tear down Xenos empires, to bring all of humanity under a single, rational, unbreakable Imperium. To do this, he created his sons, the Primarchs. 20 demigods, each the embodiment of war in a different form. Strategists, conquerors, visionaries, and destroyers. But the gods of the warp, the great predators of the soul, saw this creation as a threat. Before the Emperor could raise his sons, they struck. A storm of raw chaos snatched the infant Primarchs from Terra and scattered them across the galaxy. Some would be found among noble civilizations, others in barbaric wastes, but all would grow to command their own legion of genetically engineered warriors, the Space Marines. The conquerors march, reunited one by one with their gene sons. The Emperor led the Great Crusade outward. World after world fell into compliance, some by diplomacy, most by fire and steel. Alien strongholds were erased. Human worlds that had forgotten the light of Terra were brought to heel. The legions were the instrument of that conquest. Each Primarch embodied the will of the Emperor in his own way. The disciplined precision of Guilliman, the relentless advance of Perturabo, the savage fury of Angron. And at their head, the brightest star of all, Horus Lupercal. The War Master's ascendancy. Horus was everything a Primarch could be. Charismatic, loved by his warriors, peerless in battle and strategy alike. When the Emperor named him War Master, Supreme Commander of all Imperial armies, the galaxy itself seemed to bow. For a time, his name was glory. Legions marched in his shadow, and victories came like the turning of the seasons. Horus was not just a general, he was the Emperor's most trusted son, the one who could inspire loyalty in any warrior. But the higher one climbs, the longer the fall. And Horus's fall would be the greatest in history. The Emperor's departure. It happened in the midst of triumph. With the galaxy nearly united, the Emperor withdrew to Terra, entrusting the War Master with the Crusade's command. The reason he gave was vague: matters of state, great works on the throne world. The truth, hidden from all but a few, was that he had begun the construction of the Imperial Webway, a labyrinth beyond the warp, a path that could free mankind from the predations of chaos forever. But to the Primarchs and to Horus, the Emperor's absence was a wound. Why now, at the peak of victory? Why leave without explaining? Horus did not voice his doubt, but it festered. And doubt is all the ruinous powers need. The Whispering Legion. Among the Primarchs, none understood the warp's lure like Lorgar of the Word-Bearers. Once he had worshipped the Emperor as a god, building monuments and spreading faith across the stars. The Emperor had destroyed that faith, humiliated Lorgar before his sons, and commanded him to serve the imperial truth, a creed of reason, without gods, without superstition. Lorgar obeyed in appearance only. In secret, he turned to the Chaos Gods, and they embraced him. His legion became a priesthood of the dark powers, missionaries of damnation. And Lorgar, patient as the warp itself, waited for the chance to strike at the Emperor through the one son he trusted most. The trap at Davin. That chance came on the moon of Davin. A former imperial governor had turned traitor, and Horus led the assault himself. The campaign was swift, until the War Master was struck by a weapon unlike any other. The blade's corruption went deeper than flesh. It poisoned his soul. In agony, near death, Horus was carried not to an apothecary, but to a temple steeped in the warp, guarded by the word-bearers. There, a ritual began. Horus's spirit was drawn into visions the gods themselves had shaped. He saw a future where the Emperor sat unmoving upon a throne of gold, a corpse sustained by sorcery and machinery. He saw the Primarchs abandoned, their purpose ended, their glory stolen. And in that future, Horus's name was nothing but dust in forgotten tomes. The War Master reborn. When Horus awoke from the ritual, the change was hidden, but absolute. The loyalty that had once defined him was gone, replaced by cold calculation and a fire lit by forbidden gods. He returned to the crusade, but his victories now served a different master. Quietly, he began to test the loyalties of his brothers. Some turned from him in disgust. Others, those with old wounds and grudges, listened. Fulgrim of the Emperor's children, seduced by the promise of perfection without limit. Mortarion of the Death Guard, bitter at the Emperor's secrecy and hypocrisy. Angren of the World Eaters, whose rage had always been a weapon in search of a target. And always Lorgar, whose whispers had begun it all. One by one they pledged themselves, not to the Emperor, but to Horus, and to the gods who waited in the warp. The Shadow Campaign. The rebellion did not begin with banners and open war. Horus moved in shadows, undermining imperial authority, planting seeds of suspicion and fear. Entire worlds were brought into his confidence without a shot fired. Governors pledged allegiance to the War Master, believing his lies of the Emperor's betrayal. In the warp, the gods laughed. Every oath broken, every seed of mistrust was another chain binding Horus to their will. Isstvan III, the first blow. The first open act of war came at Isstvan III. Horus claimed the world harbored rebellion, and he summoned loyalist companies from his own and allied legions to cleanse it. The mission was a lie. When the loyalists were deployed, the order came from orbit. Virus bombs fell, unleashing a plague that devoured all life in hours. Cities became oceans of rot. The air turned to poison. Then came the firestorms, to burn even the bones to ash. Tens of thousands of space marines, warriors who had fought beside Horus for decades, died screaming beneath the toxic skies. It was the first true taste of the heresy, and it reeked of betrayal. But some survived. On the blackened surface, loyalists fought back with desperation, turning the ruins into killing grounds. For days, the traitors sent wave after wave to finish what the bombs had begun. When it was done, Horus had purged his ranks of dissent, and blood had been spilled that could never be washed away. The galaxy burns after Isstvan. The heresy could no longer be hidden. Half the legions now marched beneath Horus's banner, their eyes turned toward Terra. The other half, the loyalists, scrambled to gather, reeling from the scale of the betrayal. Worlds burned in the path of the War Master's fleets. Imperial armies were torn apart before they even knew they were at war. The warp boiled with activity, storms and demons, summoned by the growing power of chaos, made communication and travel a nightmare. Every victory for Horus was not just military, it was psychological. He made the emperor seem distant, weak, unable to protect his people. On many worlds, the choice to side with Horus seemed not like treason, but survival. The road to Terra. Horus's plan was as audacious as it was ruthless. Strike hard, strike fast, and take the throne world before the loyalists could unite. If the emperor fell, the Imperium would die with him. But the road to Terra was long and paved with battle. On Isstvan III, loyalist legions were drawn into a trap, the Drop Site Massacre, where 3 whole legions were shattered in a single day by the traitor forces. The Salamanders, the Iron Hands, the Raven Guard, all but broken, their Primarchs dead or maimed. Every victory tightened Horus's grip on the galaxy, and every loss bled the Imperium white. The dream shattered. What made the Horus Heresy so devastating was not just the battles, but the nature of the war itself. This was not humanity against alien. It was brother against brother, mentor against pupil, father against son. The Space Marines, once the ultimate symbol of unity and strength, were now the sharpest knives turned inward. Legions that had fought side by side for centuries slaughtered each other without mercy, and the gods of chaos drank deep from the river of souls. The point of no return. By the time the Emperor understood the full scope of the treachery, it was too late to contain it. Horus was already moving toward Terra, his fleets cutting through loyalist space like a spear aimed at the heart. The skies of the Imperium glowed with the fires of 1,000 sieges. The heresy had begun not with a single blow, but with countless small cuts. A doubt left unanswered, a pride left unchecked, a whisper given too much weight. And now, the galaxy burned. Foreshadow of the end. The final confrontation, the siege of Terra, would decide the fate of humanity. Foreshadow of the end. The final confrontation, the siege of Terra, would decide the fate of humanity. But that is another story, written in blood on the walls of the Imperial Palace. What matters here is the beginning, the moment the brightest son of the Emperor chose the darkness over the light. The moment Horus Lupercal set aside loyalty, love, and reason, and embraced the gods who had whispered to him in his weakness. And thus began the Horus Heresy, a war that would last for 7 years, claim billions of lives, and leave a scar upon the Imperium that will never heal.